Memphis track boy, let's go.
My Colorado swing. My Colorado swing. My Colorado swing.
Welcome into a new BuffStampede Radio. Adam Munsterteiger, the publisher of BuffStampede.com, joined as always by football analyst William Gardner. And this week we've got a special guest on with us, Mat Smith, who I'm sure everybody that watches our channel is familiar with his channel at Real Mat Smith. That's M-A-T Smith on YouTube. Definitely subscribe to his channel. Matt, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing great. Great to see you boys. It's been way too long since we've all gotten together, so I'm glad on this Sunday we could kind of have a summit and address the current state of affairs and get to some fun fan questions. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. William, how are you doing this week?
Well, I'm going to be the physics analyst today since we got a question on Bell's theorem. I did my homework, boys, so we're going to get into
Thank goodness, because I read the description of that, and I punted on it. I was not going to tax my mental capacity to its limits there.
Well,
everybody better pick their favorite quantum theorem because we're diving into that one.
Don't give away the good stuff early.
Yeah, right.
We got asked a question about our favorite fruits, so we're going to get diverse on this show, but obviously the bulk of it will be surrounding Colorado football, and it really is the calm before the storm. The players are still on summer break; they're going to be coming back on campus next weekend, and then we'll start to get some more of that video from behind the scenes and have a few more things to talk about. We'll get a chance to see this roster come together, and so even though it really doesn't fully ramp up until camp starts, there will be more to talk about here. And because it is kind of the calm before the storm, I wanted to make this a mailbag heavy-centric show, so we're going to have a lot of questions from fans, but let's talk about the latest addition for the Buffaloes, former UCLA Bruin Walker Anderson. He joined the herd on Saturday, 6'8", 335-pound redshirt freshman, practiced at guard and tackle with the Bruins. William, right in your wheelhouse here. Let's start with you. What was your reaction to Walker Anderson joining the mix?
Well, I mean, given the way our scholarship numbers and everything works now, there's no loss to it. But the more I look at this guy, the more excited I am about it. I just found his high school highlights and posted them up on the Stampede board, and you know what? He looks pretty darn good. And he's a lot bigger now than he was then. He got a full year, most of a full year under his belt at UCLA. So I think he comes in at that size with his length and can play any one of those four spots, anything but center, I think. And he plays nasty. And there's a little bit of footage from him at practice at UCLA. Not sure how, you never know how much you can take from practice, but he doesn't shy away from contact, and he strikes guys, and he was playing against defensive tackles, power 4 defensive tackles. So I like what I see. I don't think that he's necessarily in the mix to start, but I also think it suggests that Coach Prime and his offensive line coaches want to do development of younger guys as well as bringing in a bunch of 4th and 5th year guys every year. So I think they probably want to get into developing some of their own talent as well, which clearly they're doing with guys like Seaton and Yaya Atia.
Yeah, it seems like they almost are more willing on the offensive side of the ball to try to kind of cultivate through younger guys a little bit more so than defensively, where it's been so transfer portal centric. Matt, any thoughts with Walker Anderson? Like William was talking about, there seems more kind of like a depth piece early on, and then we'll see how he develops.
Yeah, offensive line in general, we say this on our show, I've lost complete perspective on it. Last year it looked good on paper coming in, and it was in a lot of ways it was better, but it was more of the same. And so I think it's just kind of a crapshoot when you go building it kind of the way they have. But what's clear to me is that they were a little short on numbers. So now that I think they're at 15, does that sound about right to you? 15 linemen, Adam?
That is exactly the number, yes, in terms of scholarship guys. Yep.
And that's where you want to be, right? And so you have a younger, talented player, and it fits into the trend of what we've seen from Gunnar White. And he told us this when we spoke to him in spring ball, that they're looking to go bigger. I think in the past, they maybe kind of had to take some smaller guys, but he doesn't love the guard to tackle transition. He'd rather have a guy go from tackle to guard, and having a little bit more size is important there, so you don't end up having a Tyler Brown situation like we ran into last year. I think that is one thing they were trying to avoid. And if you look at all these guys they brought in general, not just Anderson, I mean, they're all huge, right? So you've got a lot of size here, and this is a developmental depth piece. And, I can't think that this is someone who's going to factor in this year. And to be honest, guys, if the way I'm approaching it right now in general, and this is just my personal opinion, if I can't depend or at least project a player to factor in this year, I have a hard time projecting that player to factor in over their careers, because I don't know if they'll be there the next year. That's just kind of the trend right now with the way things are going. So if he stays, this is a really nice developmental piece. He's a mountain of a man. And look, you've got pedigree here. So I like the addition. It's just another developmental piece, as you mentioned, and kind of goes to what they've been doing, which is just adding a bunch of trees up there up front.
I will say, if Walker Anderson is like 15th or 14th on the pecking order at O-line, that's a good sign for your program, right? That definitely wouldn't have been the case 2 years ago for sure, and even last year, that they didn't have quite as much depth that you feel, okay, if Phil Houston gets healthy and can go out there, Kareem Harden, there are more guys even that are coming back in the program that I think you'd feel better putting out there than maybe you did last year. William, you're not willing to say that this is going to be a good offensive line unit until you see it, but I think there is some hope in terms of from 1 to 15 that you've got a lot of guys that you would feel okay being out there.
Well, every single one of those 15 I'd put on the field if, under whatever circumstances. I mean, not necessarily that all 15 of them could be starters, but if you needed somebody for a play here or there, a series or whatever, all 15 of those guys. Now, normally, back in the olden days of 2 years ago, you would have 15 guys and a couple would be true freshmen, and 2 of these are, but they were both here for spring. So I think every one of those 15 guys is potentially a player at this level. There's not anybody in that group that I look at and go, they don't fit. They're I would be question mark and putting them in there. But as far and to mention, to go back to one thing Matt said, when I was on the staff at Wake Forest, and I was worked for the defensive line coach Ray McCartney, and he used to tell guys, if you can't play here, you go to the offensive line, and then you start like most people look at the offensive line and you want to move people, as Matt mentioned, from outside in, right? Rather move a tackle to a guard than a guard to a tackle, because guards start out, generally speaking, not having the skills to play a tackle. And guard's the easiest thing to play on the offensive line. So if this kid can get in there and push people around at guard, that's fine. But I think he also gets in there and is somebody that will compete with Carde Smith at the tackle spots for the next couple of years. And like Matt said, and we got a question about this, about underclassmen on the roster. I don't know, man. Do you build a roster with a lot of upperclassmen now because you don't know who's coming back next year?
Yeah. And we'll get into that more as we get into the mailbag. A few more topics before we do that. I got to send out congratulations to Travis Hunter, who tied the knot on Saturday, got married in Chattanooga, Tennessee. It was fun to see some of the pictures from some of the CU staffers and players that were there. Kind of a traditional wedding that he had there. I don't. This is not in my wheelhouse, Matt. Do you watch any wedding shows on?
No, I know it's not
Lifetime or.
I know it's not in your wheelhouse. You don't have like the details of weddings down. I experienced that firsthand when I attended yours.
That's what the bride is for, my friend.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. No, I'm teasing Adam and Liz, obviously, but congratulations to Travis. Look, I mean, love is love. It's different for everybody. That's about the extent of my commentary. I can't say it's a journey that I feel I'm ever going to want to or need to take, but, hey, man, everybody's different.
You just haven't met the right woman yet, Matt.
No. That we'll say that's what it is. Yeah.
But, no, I think for all the criticism they've received, most of it was very unfair and, even just a cringe-worthy stuff out there about, it's like mind your own business. If they're happy, they're happy.
That's
that-
where I'm
that's
at with it. It's just like they're young, you know. I mean, I don't need to really commentate on their personal life. They've been married. Travis and Leanna have been living in a house together for 2 years in a really nice house that most people don't move into until they're married. You know, like that. This is just an extension of their journey. I'm happy for them. Travis is the best, and I wish them nothing but a lifetime of health and happiness.
All right, moving along. The Buffaloes extended an offer to the top-ranked edge prospect in the 2026 class, Zion Eleeley. He claims that he's still solid with Maryland, but we know that he works out with Jordan Seaton. He is from Baltimore, so it's going to be tough to pull him out of that DMV area because he's pretty loyal and was an early commit for the Terrapins. But it's worth keeping an eye on this, you know, especially we're talking about late May. We've seen Colorado come into the picture with some of these blue chip guys a little bit later in the process and have success. So I will say that even though he doesn't have crazy length, William, I don't know if you've seen Zion's film, but I mean, he gets off the ball pretty darn quick and does look like a 5-star. It looks like a legit blue chip guy.
Well, I think he's got pretty good length. I mean, length to me primarily talks about arm length, and he's pretty good there at 6'4", 220. He's a prototype pass rusher, and you know, probably as a guy who right off the bat is flirting with 10 sacks a year, even as a freshman. So he's the real deal. 6'4", 220. I think he's got the frame to put on a lot of size, but his first step is outrageous. And you know, in the bowl, in the high school bowl game, whatever's, and nobody's able to stick with the guy. He'll have to learn some techniques at this level. And I think, frankly, it's wise for him to come out and work with Jordan Seaton because they're perfect for each other in terms of development against those types of skills. I have a hard time believing we can't beat Maryland, even though it's a hometown school. But, you know, people said we couldn't get Seaton. People said we couldn't get Cormani McLean. And I don't put anything beyond Coach Prime, especially with high-level recruits like this. And since we got him in Boulder already.
And that's actually going to be a pretty big position of need just looking ahead to 2026 because you do have London Merritt in the program, but you know, a lot of these edge guys are upperclassmen. Arden Walker it's his last year. Keaton Wade, it's his last year. Samuel Okunlola, if he blows up, might potentially be a guy that could go pro. And even Alexander McPherson is a guy that I've heard they expect to develop into a hand in the ground guy down the road. So that is a position where I think you could sell a 5-star guy and coming in and being part of that mix right away with London Merritt and just being, you know, one of the more disruptive younger tandems in the Big 12. I think that's a good selling point as well for Colorado.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of playing time. There's a lot of possibilities with the way the past depth chart looks right now, and I think he's a guy that we got a really good shot at. You know, it's like if a guy's going to come in here and spend time working out with one of our players in our campus, I think we got a really good shot at him. Beyond that, only he knows, I guess. But he's a guy that would come in and from day one would be a guy that you put out there on the field in certain situations and just let him go. Really, really kind of like Tajay McCoy did his first year, but more so.
Yeah. Matt, interesting development with Deion Sanders Jr., better known as Bucky, getting granted permission by NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell to have unprecedented NFL video access for well-off media. You follow the NFL closer than I do. I'm curious, is this something that's done ever?
No, I was pretty surprised on multiple fronts. One, that they asked for it before Shedeur kind of cemented himself, to be quite honest with you, and two, that they got it. The NFL really likes to keep everything in-house and on, you know, their terms. It's a great sign of respect for Deion Sanders and his family, and certainly the work that Bucky has put into making Well Off an incredibly successful YouTube channel and brand in general. I mean, he's done a fantastic job, and, you know, I think he's somebody that you can trust not to put out any sort of sensitive information. Now, that being said, they can grant him, you know, that access, but does Cleveland want that, you know? And do they want that in training camp? Do you want that storyline? Dylan Gabriel's not going to have a camera crew, and that was kind of part of this whole thing that the NFL kept saying during this whole process. It's like, hey, you know, as much as we all bristle at it and just kind of shake our heads at it, they want him to play the game a little bit. And if he's And honestly, I don't think they're going to be around before he cements himself on that roster. I think that would be a mistake to be around too much. Now, I think that would be interesting, but unless they're planning on doing, the same thing that they did here, which I don't know if that's the best call right now, to be honest with you. I think they might want to just fly under the radar until things iron out just a little bit more, quite honestly. That would be my advice. But then again, that's not really their MO, and I don't expect that. And it's not like I want to see anything different. I just, for their own sake, I mean, we know how ridiculous all of the criticism has been against him. And even for Shedeur, he didn't want to do the Shedeur when the, Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson, his new teammates, asked him to do it at, picture day. I think he's trying to keep it a little bit more low key right now until he earns some respect in that locker room, which, it's only a matter of time if he gets a fair shake at it.
Yeah. All right, let's dive into the mailbag. Our first question comes from
one thought on that. I think with Shedeur is that he doesn't go out of his way seeking that kind of thing. He didn't do the watch thing, with forethought. I think that was in the moment, and it blew up into something.
Yeah,
and he's never been a guy. I don't know. From what I see, he seems like a quiet guy who doesn't like to be in those spotlight all at that much. He's not his dad, for sure.
I mean, he definitely enjoys the spotlight a little bit. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But the point is you're right. He's not going out of his way to push that. It's just more the brand. My point was, it'll be interesting to see how that's all implemented and what they really do with that. They might give him access, but I don't know that they're going to do a ton with that until it's all ironed out. Maybe not. Right. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see.
Today's episode is brought to us by Macaulay Capital Fractional CFO Services. Is your business looking for financial guidance and support but not yet big enough to hire a full-time CFO? Well, we have a solution for you. Hiring a fractional CFO who can work with your business on a part-time basis. You get the benefit of having a seasoned financial expert on your team without the commitment or expense of a full-time hire. And here's the best part. It's likely that a partnership with Macaulay Capital will be a win-win situation, meaning that your business will make more money from the guidance of a fractional CFO than the total cost of partnering with us. For more information or to set up a meeting, please visit MacaulayCapital.com. That's MCCAULEY Capital.com. William, everybody that listens to our podcast knows that we love the Hungry Toad. They've been bringing a taste of England to Boulder since 1991. At the Hungry Toad, they serve up hearty homemade fare from their scratch kitchen paired with a brilliant selection of British beers. They're the perfect spot for friends and family to gather, relax, and enjoy the warm, welcoming atmosphere. If you're mad for football, so are they. Whether it's the American gridiron or European footy, they proudly support CU football and CU women's soccer. The Hungry Toad, Boulder's local pub that's not on Pearl Street. Head to 2543 Broadway in Boulder.
And you know what? Hans Serrata don't take no whoopings either. He hands them out. How's that for a second?
I love it. I love it. All right, let's dive into the BuffStampede Radio mailbag. Our first question comes from @HVLTZ on X. He asked, what position group battle are you most excited to see other than quarterback? William, I already know what your answer is going to be here, so I'll let you lead off.
Wide receiver and kicker? Is that what you're going to say?
No.
Punter? I'm not getting it. Well, it's clearly the offensive line, but I think that probably is
just right. I was going to say right tackle specifically.
Yeah. Well, I think every single spot on that line is open except for left tackle. That's why it's interesting to me. Anybody saying who they think is going to be the starter at any position on that offensive line, the only guy I think aside from Seaton who has a head start right now is Darian Miguel at center, because there's not as many guys there ready to compete with him. Yaya might or might not be ready, but every single position on that line except for left tackle is wide open as far as I'm concerned, because they didn't bring all these, as people always say, oh, this guy didn't come here to sit on the bench. Well, they didn't bring in any of these guys to sit on the bench. And there's legitimately three potential guys at every single spot outside of left tackle. So I think the whole damn offensive line is up for grabs, and so I expect to see real competition. We didn't see Ogunbiyi in spring. Larry Johnson comes in now. Xavier Hill comes in now. Philip Houston looks good coming back. So it just I couldn't begin to tell you who that starting offensive line will be outside of left tackle.
I did see some video of Philip Houston on social media where he's back in the weight room, so that's a good sign.
Yeah, he looks great, and he looks great too. I mean, he looks better. He looks significant. You can just look at him and go, "That guy's a lot bigger than when he got here over a year ago."
Matt, what are you looking forward to in terms of position battle outside of quarterback?
Looking forward to and having my eye on. When I was going through this, I realized there's two different distinctions this year for me, because I'm not looking forward to every position battle because I'm not confident in some of them, but I will have my eye on a lot of them. Now, number one, I think second outside corner, right? I mean, RJ Johnson, Tion Parks, now that Colton Hood is out of the picture, who assumes that spot? I think that is something that I'm going to be following. I think it's good that RJ has that jump on it, but Coach Prime told us post spring game that they were looking for 3 new corners, and that was before Colton jumped in the portal. So who knows what he's thinking about at that position. I think the safety room will be fascinating as well. And I've also got my room on the linebackers, my eye on the linebacker room, I should say. That to me is going to be interesting to see, because I thought we might see some more additions in the portal, and maybe we do throughout the summer. But as of right now, really that whole kind of back end of the defense.
Yeah. I think receiver is going to be really intriguing to watch. And I do think it's maybe a little less important as, some of those offensive line positions and like you mentioned, Matt, the second cornerback position, because you're going to rotate less there than you will at receiver this year. I don't think it's going to be like it was last year where you had your primary 4 guys that were going to get maybe 80% of the reps at receiver. Yeah. I think this year it's going to be much more of a rotation out there, but just seeing who really rises in that competition. I think, Draylon Miller would be the first guy you'd mention there. Omari Miller probably second, but Joseph Williams made some big plays this spring, and you've got a long list of young guys in the program at that position. So I think that's going to be a fun one to watch. But I think O-line is probably the most up in the air at this point, outside of maybe that second cornerback spot.
I think that wide receiver room, I think, the next question that's coming up, the answer to the next question might be half the wide receiver room could be the breakout player.
That's true. Yeah. Another question from at HVLTZ on X. He asked, who is your breakout player this year?
For me, going with me first, I guess. I'll jump in.
Go for it.
I think, I was looking at that wide receiver room, and you could list almost all of them, frankly. But I think that, to me, I hope it would be Dallin Hayden or Micah Welch, somebody in that running back room. The guy I'm going to go ahead and pick is Savell Smalls, because I think he's an outstanding athlete who did a lot more things for us last year than people think. And if we implement the tight end position more in the passing game this year, I think he'll have a big year. So I think the breakout player this year might be Savell Smalls, but it also depends on how you define breakout, because I think some guys who have shown some things, I think on defense, Anquin Barnes might be that guy, breakout player who's played a little so far, but is ready to take that next step forward. That would be my thoughts.
I also have Anquin Barnes written down. If one of those running backs breaks out, I mean, praise be. I honestly, at this stage, we can talk about that in a little bit. But Draylon Miller is on here. I think Draylon is poised for a huge year. I think the quarterback in the passing game is going to be a work in progress all year based upon some of the stuff that I saw in spring and kind of meshing this new system together. But he looks fantastic. He was turning heads at Pro Day, and I'm looking forward to it. He's working with Caden Salter down with Select QB. I saw they were running routes together, so that chemistry continuing to build. A couple other names. You mentioned Anquin Barnes. I have 2 names on defensive line written down. One of the two, if they could have a breakout season, would be huge. It's either McNeil or Barnes. One of those two guys. McNeil is a guy that has flashed Big 12 Player of the Week potential before, right? If he's a guy who can consistently put that together on a game-to-game basis, that would really transform, I think, what we're going to see this season from that Buffs defensive line. And then I'll give you two edges as well. Arden Walker and Sam Okunlola. Maybe they've broken out for CU's context, but as far as like conference breakouts, I think those two guys have the potential to really be big in this team's production this year. And the last one, who's the one new face that I'm going to say could break out, is Tawfiq Bayard. I think that's a young man who could potentially have a breakout season and really kind of stamp his name on this defense.
And, just to jump in on the defensive line, Jaheim Otis, if he plays the way he played at times for Alabama, and Barnes and McNeil come to their full potential, that may answer a lot of the questions behind them. If you got guys that you can't block up front, that's going to make up for a lot of issues if they develop at the linebackers and secondary.
Even Tawfiq Thomas, you've got so many guys in that D-line that are just kind of on the verge of taking that next step as a player. Number one on my list was Anquan Barnes, and you guys both mentioned him. So kind of the consensus pick here for this question. I'd also put down R.J. Johnson. People that follow Colorado's program closely are aware that he had a breakout spring. But I think he's going to be the guy that's going to have the casual fans reaching for their roster if he indeed wins that other cornerback job. I jotted down Draylon Miller, Dallin Hayden as well. We were pretty critical of him last year. He kind of handled that criticism, came back. I think there were some rumblings that maybe he would hit the portal, but he had a really strong spring. And there were a couple runs in that spring game that looked better than what we saw out of him in game day last year. Now, is that going to translate to games this year? We'll see. But even on that short goal line touchdown he made a couple guys miss. When did we see that last year? Did we ever see that?
Right. And I would go, going back to that defensive line, can't overstate the importance if those guys, if Anquan Barnes and Otis and McNeil break out this year. I would just tell people, think back to Utah when they first came into the Pac-12 and what a difference those defensive tackles made for them. If you've got unblockable NFL draft pick type defensive tackles, that makes up for a lot of ills. And the other guy that had a huge spring that none of us mentioned was Quincy Wiggins. And I'm just very curious to see how they're going to use him, because they're talking about not just leaving a hand on the ground, but you put the green dot on his helmet, and that says he's a guy that has a bigger impact on your defense.
Yeah, that's surprised. Sorry, not to interrupt you. I that surprised me, William, when I heard that. I don't know if that's going to be permanent or something that they were just playing with. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's why I say I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what's going to happen in the fall.
Yeah.
It seemed like Quincy Wiggins was Coach Prime's pick for this question, the way he talked about him this spring. So we'll see. Buffs Econ on BuffStampede.com asks, can we run the damn ball this year? Well, the bar has been set very low. I mean, literally last in the FBS ranks the last 2 years in rushing offense. So there's only one way to go. I guess I'll make the prediction that they don't finish dead last in the FBS ranks this year. But how much higher than that, I don't know.
There's only one guy that you look at to answer this question, and that's Pat Shurmur, because we could run the ball last year, and I don't give a damn who says otherwise. When we tried to run the ball, we did. When you hand off 11 times, you're not going to have success at it in any game with any running backs. So I would say we were able to run the ball last year when we chose to. Will we choose to this year? Remains to be seen. Will those three offensive line coaches get the offensive line working? I don't know. Will Shurmur call the right plays? Will he call the traps and the inside zones and counters and such like that? I don't know. But it's not as hard to get a running game going as people think it is. But a lot of it rests on the shoulders of the play caller.
Well, it helps to have Caden Salter a dual threat quarterback too, right? I think that's going to open up some things in the running game that unfortunately Shedeur just not being able to keep defenses honest the same way that Caden Salter will.
When you've got to assign a linebacker to him or somebody to him, and that prevents them from playing free and just reacting to the ball.
What do you think, Matt? They're going to run the damn ball this year?
I don't know, guys. I don't know what to say anymore when people ask me this question. I mean, this is 2 years running now where Coach Prime has said that their number one priority is running the ball. I just cannot believe they haven't gotten a real power 4 back with experience out of the portal. It stunned me. They've lost their lead back from last year. They added DeKalen Taylor. I think it's a terrible plan, quite frankly, to go into the season with the position room as it sets up to be right now. I don't think there's enough depth, and I don't think either of the two guys that returned, and I'm not, no disrespect to Charlie, but Charlie's not a serious member of this discussion. I mean, he's just not if you're talking about winning Big 12 titles. So that's the one area where I just have fundamentally disagreed with how they've approached it. That being said, having a quarterback that will run, and I think whose best asset might be his ability to make something happen with his legs, will help a lot. Having what appears to be a better offensive line on paper will help, hopefully, knock on wood. And to William's point, having a scheme that allows you to do it. Now, you put a lot of that on Shermer. What was interesting is several members of the coaching staff in spring ball, when they were speaking to us, basically put the majority of the blame, I would say, Adam, at Shadour's feet for choosing not to want to hand the ball off, because a lot of that they kind of gave him control at the line to do. And, you know, if it's a handoff to Dallin Hayden into the back of your left guard for, you know, -1 yard versus a little, you know, bubble screen out to Jimmy Horn, 9 out of 10 times Shadour was going to do that. So quite frankly, I think when we met at the beginning of last year and did our season preview, I said, guys, I don't know what to tell you about the run game. And then it literally was the worst in the country again. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to watching it play out. That is my best answer. That's my best answer.
Well, I think when you talk about, people say, you know, the national narrative is going to be, well, we lost Shador, we lost Travis Hunter, we lost all those wide receivers, so we're not going to be any good. But I can see a scenario in which losing Shador and Travis and all those guys actually, and this is going to sound crazy, but we can actually be better if we change our offense and diversify things so that we're not entirely dependent on the quarterback and the wide receivers.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Go ahead. So I think that, you know, there's a situation where you can lose great players, and that's what great teams do. You lose great players in the draft every year, and you come back and you rebuild something different with the new guys. So I think that there's a possibility that this offense could be even better if they diversify things and do get that running game going. So I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that the offense is going to be struggling just because we lost all those guys.
Yeah. And I think that Pat Shermer can't lean on those screens as kind of an extension of the running game the way that he did with Shador, right? So it's going to force him, I think, to be more diverse as a play caller. At least that's what you would hope, I think, as a Colorado fan. At Do Flamingo Bird on X asked, what player from last year surprised you the most, good or bad? That was kind of fun to think about last year for a second here. Who jumped out?
I did both sides of the scale.
Yeah, I did too.
Me too. Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. Well, you started last one. I'll start this one, William. I'll just start with the guys who surprised me good, you know, in a good sense. Nikhai Hill-Green would have to be my biggest surprise. I mean, the fact that he came on and played at the level that he did, despite, you know, starting his career at Michigan, he was kind of a non-factor right away. And for him to come in and play at that level, I thought was incredibly impressive. Cam Silmon-Craig was another guy for me. Like, this is a player who assumed the defensive leadership mantle last year, and I just personally didn't anticipate that happening to that degree. Cam really came on as a big, wonderful surprise to me, who was somebody who was able to be there on a down-to-down basis, consistent, and that driving force, both from a vocal perspective, from a football IQ perspective, and just an overall leadership perspective last year. And then the last one would be Colton Hood, because Colton made some massive plays last year over the course of the season. He almost won them the Kansas State game, right? I mean, on that interception, they come back, and unfortunately just wasn't to be, right?
Yeah. What you got there, William?
Well, and I both of my guys, and I think positively and negatively are at the same position, because I really thought Hank Zelinskas was on his way to being an all Big 12, all Big 12 player, and he was playing that way in the first few games until suddenly he couldn't snap the ball right, and then you couldn't count on him. If a center can't get the ball to the quarterback every single time, you can't play him. And so then the other guy on the other spread, there is nobody on the planet outside of his parents who thought Cash Cleveland could do anything at this level. And he came in as a true freshman walk-on and handled that center position pretty darn well all season long, to the tune of 9 wins. And I'm not really wanting to get into the debate of whether he should still be here and what's his future at the position, but nobody can say there was a bigger surprise than that guy coming in and having the success he did. But I think Zelinskas will show he's a good center at Rutgers, but that was sort of a one of those subplots that played out during the season that was just really kind of weird and interesting.
My biggest surprise was a guy that didn't even play till week 8, and that's Keaton Wade. And we're all looking at our roster like, that's Keaton Wade. He's really out there making plays like this. It was 11 snaps in that game. He had 2 sacks, 3 pressures, and 2 tackles.
At Arizona?
At Arizona. And then later in week 11 against Texas Tech, he had 5 pressures, 2 sacks, and just 20 defensive snaps. And our first chance to talk to Keaton Wade, I'm sure you remember this, Matt. He said, I'm still planning to redshirt. And then Coach Prime comes in and says,
and we all looked at him like, yeah, I don't think so.
So, but he's back this year. His brother's gone, but he's back. And then Nikai Hill-Green was the other one that I had listed, and you talked about him, Matt. As far as underperforming based on my expectations, I feel bad saying this, but Tyler Brown, I thought, was going to be a quality guy for them. And it's maybe not fair because they put him in some situations that were not to his strengths, putting him at tackle and really never letting him get comfortable in a spot for a long period of time. But I still expected more out of him. Brian Urlacher was the comparison for Trevor Woods, and he didn't even make it through the season. That's what Coach Prime compared Trevor Woods to at Big 12 Media Day. We're all wondering a little bit, maybe that was a little bit of a stretch, but I would say him as well is just kind of not living up to our expectations from a year ago.
Well, I think that when you mentioned Tyler Brown and Kareem Harden, it's interesting to me that as 2 guys that started quite a few games at guard for us the last 2 seasons, neither one of them is really in the conversation to be a starter this year. But I think what we saw from Tyler is that he's limited in his explosiveness and his length. Yeah, I know they put him in some tough situations at tackle and guard, but he's also just he's not as explosive as his size would suggest. And frankly, he's a lot, it's crazy to say this, but he's a lot smaller than the guys they're bringing in now. So I think we saw a lot of his limitations, and I was as excited to see him as anyone else. But I figured going into the season we had not seen him really play a lot at this level, so I wasn't sure how he was going to do.
Savion Riley was kind of a disappointment too. We saw him get that early action when Cam Sillman-Craig went down, and then he really just disappeared. And I think there was some frustration from the coaching staff over his work ethic, and now he's no longer in the program. But that was a guy I thought at safety this year we'd be talking about being in the mix for a starting role, and he's no longer part of the mix. Matt, did you have a surprise negative guy from last year?
Yeah, for me it was Dallin Hayden. I mean, I know they didn't. I was. Yeah, guys, the fact that we're going into this year with him as their projected starter to me blows my mind. I respect that he's looked a little bit better, but I mean, there's just so little juice there that after seeing a whole season of it, look, I mean, this is my opinion and my opinion alone, but that's such a surprise to me that they would even consider going back to that well. So, that was my biggest one, my biggest negative. The only other thing I would say about Trevor Woods is I don't know who really expected him to be a good fit there. They really hurt his career by making him switch to linebacker because he was always a better safety. So that one I would push back on just a little bit as far as like disappointment, because I never had expectations that he would start. It was only ever out of necessity, which is why last spring, I think one of the first questions I asked him was, did you ever think about leaving? Because, I mean, you just kind of got to look at the writing on the wall, right? I mean, it was a plug and play by necessity the year before That's why, to make room for Shiloh and Cam back there, and they wanted to keep him on the field, but that was never going to be their plan, and it wasn't ever going to be a good plan. And I thought it put him at a real disadvantage to the point where now he's playing at Jacksonville State, when after his freshman and sophomore year, I really thought this was a young man who could, contribute at a high level at safety at a Power 4 program, and he'd probably be the only guy that I'd say they probably didn't guide in the right direction, but it was only out of necessity to the team, and it kind of just goes to show who Trevor really is, that without question, he just said, of course, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to help the team. So that would be my only pushback there, but I'm with you on the rest.
And I had Hayden down too, because I expected this guy who had some success at Ohio State to come in here and light it up. And, I guess it just shows when you're in an offensive system like Ohio State, you've got a great offensive line and there are open holes that I could frankly run through. And he came here and it's like, this guy couldn't find a hole with a guide dog, for Christ's sake.
No, man, it was rough. And look, I want Dallin to go prove me wrong, because he's an excellent young man, high character. He does a lot for the community. I don't want people to think that that's what I believe about him. But as far as what he showed on the football field, I don't get it.
Yeah.
All right, let's move along to Farhang's question here, which we teased earlier. He asked, can you discuss how relatively few underclassmen there are on the roster? After seniors and DJ McKinney, we have 44 possible returnees next year. Based on the last couple of years, we'll lose at least a dozen more to the portal, leaving only roughly 30 returning players. Has the staff built this roster to make a run for the Big 12 championship this year? 14 of 28 of our linemen on the offensive and defensive line are seniors. So you guys teased this earlier. This is partly just the new landscape of college football in the portal era, but then you also have a head coach that flat out says, I am not a patient man. I want to win now. And that's why you get a roster that is going to look like this. And yeah, there's going to be a lot of turnover, and you go back to that portal well again next year, and you're probably going to try to get back up close to that number again. I just think that is what you're going to have to get used to as a college football fan now, especially as a Colorado fan under Coach Prime.
Well, and I think it's not just the patience of Coach Prime, it's the patience of players too. People don't want to sit around on the roster for 3 years to wait their turn anymore, and how the hell are you going to keep them around if somebody's going to offer them a chance to play and maybe offer them some money to go somewhere else? There's almost not a lot of upside to having full classes of high school players filling out your roster who aren't going to be around in a couple of years. So I don't know. I think this is just the way it's going to be. And I would answer it also in another way. I think Coach Prime honestly believes that he's building a team to compete for the conference championship every year. Will they? Remains to be seen, but I think that's his goal every year.
Yeah. Undoubtedly, that's definitely his goal, right? And as Adam brought up, they talk about wanting to win. Shoot, he told us he thinks they could have a better team this year than they did last year, which to me right now doesn't compute, but that's where his intention is at, and that's the standard that he wants to set. He wants to be a perennial conference title contender. So I think that's the standard we uphold him to. Right? I mean, he says that the standard doesn't slip no matter what. William, after the spring game, I posed my question to him, like, what did I say, Adam? With this new chapter, he goes, what do you mean new chapter? It's not a new chapter. I was like, well, isn't it a new season? I mean, you have a new quarterback and like 15 new starters. To me, that's pretty close to a new chapter for your team. I mean, we can argue semantics all day, but the point here is that he sees it as the same trajectory, right? So, yeah, look, I think he's actually been on the leading edge of how to develop and construct a roster in the, I guess, modern era. The last couple of years is how I would kind of classify that of college football. He was the one who really innovated it, and I think he's kind of finding the sweet spot. However, because of some of the topics we're about to get to, because of how prevalent money has become this summer NIL-wise, I think they've even had to adjust again this summer, because I think things have kind of become clear that, well, man, if we don't have the $40 million roster that Texas is putting together this year, we're probably just not going to be in the conversation for some of these other guys that maybe we would have been when we had Shedeur and Travis as an equalizer, but now probably don't until we prove it a little bit more. So maybe we do go back to the high school well a little bit more for 2026. I'm not sure.
It does seem like they're planning to sign more guys, but they are still, from a high school recruiting perspective, still very much quality over quantity.
For sure.
Yeah, and that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
Especially when, as we discussed, you just can't bank on these guys being around for 2 years, much less 4 or 5 now. So it really is changed the game so much. And part of that is sad. You love the way that you used to get to watch these guys develop. But, there's a certain point, Matt, where you're the old guy yelling at clouds because this is not changing anytime soon.
Can I ask you a recruiting question real quick? Sorry, I know this isn't on our little sheet.
Yeah,
here,
go for it.
This has been bugging me. How excited should fans really be getting when we talk about prospects for the 26 class right now? Less
than they should be. It should have been 10 years ago, right? But you get certain guys like a Jordan Seaton from the high school ranks that are going to be these catalysts for your program. And that could be, Chauncey Gooden and Carday Smith on the offensive line in a couple of years. But it is hard to bank on and to really invest yourself into these guys too much emotionally, because there is a good chance many of them are going to let you down. In fact, many will. But it is still important to kind of get the key pieces, I feel like, for your program from the high school ranks. I still think there is a reason to follow recruiting and to get excited about the fact that when you look at the list of official visitors that were on campus earlier this month that are going to be on campus next month, Colorado is going head to head with the who's who of college football. And, it's going to make it a little bit more challenging to get these guys, obviously, and we're going to get into the NIL stuff here in a minute. But I've never seen Colorado consistently have these star-studded weekends under previous coaches, and so that part of it's got to make you excited. And there will be guys that commit to Colorado and stick with Coach Prime as long as he's in Boulder. But yeah, I've seen it on our message board, Matt. Like, people get excited about the commitments, but it's not the way it used to be. People would just lose their minds over commitments. And now even a blue chip guy, people are excited. But William, you've seen that too, right? Just not quite the same level of dedication to recruiting, in terms of just fans following it the way they used to.
Well, I think until this sort of new era settles itself out a little bit, and I think it will to some extent. You don't know whether a guy's going to, if he commits, right, and then maybe he's gone after 1 year. They don't stick around us to develop. But from the same standpoint, like I look at the guys that they've offered right now and have had come in visiting, and they got like 10 or 12 offensive linemen, and the level of the quality of the guys that they're looking at, if any 4 of those guys picked, I'd be ecstatic with, So on one level, the level of guys that they're looking at is very exciting. But I can also see the point of people who say, well, what's the difference? They're not going to stick around anyway. So, if they're not starting right off the bat, will they hit the road? But I think it also leads to the fact that a coach has to keep recruiting his roster now. Even guys that are on your team, you have to keep recruiting them the entire time they're there, or they'll leave. They might leave anyway.
So, Adam, if you had to surmise a takeaway from being able to get all of these high-level blue-chip prospects in, what would your takeaway be? Is it different than what that really means? Just the ability to have them all come in. Do you still see it as a Coach Prime effect, or do you see it as Colorado more legitimizing themselves in the recruiting scene?
It's mostly Coach Prime based. Yeah.
Okay.
Probably if I talk to 10 prospects, 9 are going to mention Deion Sanders,
right? And
usually within the first or second sentence. So it is a big part of it. But
I'm just curious.
It makes the fans have to be more patient, because they could fill up their commit list right now if they wanted to start throwing out offers to guys that are kind of in that next tier. It's going to be interesting to see, because we really should probably just get into this NIL stuff instead of teasing it. But we got one more question that's not NIL related here before we get into some off-topic stuff later.
I do think it means you got to prioritize guys that are more ready to play now than guys that are going to be ready in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. Nepper on Buff Stampede asked, Georgia Tech feels they are loaded this year and thinking since the Buffs are apparently going to introduce a significantly different offensive system with a new quarterback and possibly running back issues, I see problems ahead in the opener. The remainder of the season appears much more doable. Tell me I am wrong. They haven't come out with a line for this game, have they, Matt?
I think it's 3.5. I think Georgia Tech's a 3.5 point favorite.
Okay.
Yeah. By the way, William, before we get to that, I just wanted to say really good point. I think you're right. Like, you have to prioritize guys who can play right away. So you just got to spend the time recruiting those blue chip guys, because otherwise bringing in projects in high school, we can do that later, right? We really need to be spending the bulk of our time right now if we're trying to compete for titles with the young men who we believe as 17, 18 years old can step in and at least contribute or be a part of our long-term plan. So that is, to me, because I've been trying to think about what the takeaway there is, and I think that's it. That's really smart. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. The line, I believe, Adam, is 3.5.
Okay. Yeah, that's going to be a tough game. I haven't done my deep dive on Georgia Tech. Obviously, Haynes King is back at quarterback, and he was one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the country last year. Yeah, they're feeling good down there. I mean, they are coming off a winning season, 7-6. They won their bowl game. I think their first winning season in a little while. So yeah, they're pretty confident. It's not a juggernaut football program coming to Boulder, though.
No.
Well, they're not a juggernaut team either. I read the question as there's sort of a hint there that we can't beat this team, and I don't think that's true by any means. I think it's a pretty even matchup, and I think we'll win. I think the home field advantage gives us an advantage, but I think we got to have a chance at a pretty decent team as well. So Georgia Tech, if you look at last season, I'm not sure. I'm not a big follower of Georgia Tech, but they only beat 2 teams with a winning record last year, so they weren't any juggernaut last year that they're bringing back everybody and they're going to be great. So I tell him he's wrong. I think we got a great shot to win this game.
I think it's going to be a great football game. I'm really excited. That's the opener.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is the year maybe you would have rather had Delaware as your opener, quite frankly, just because everything's going to be so new, and because Georgia Tech does have a lot of pieces returning, they'll be just probably a little bit more ready to go in the first half. I mean, look, the North Dakota State game last year, we were all kind of sweating things in the first half because that's a senior-laden team who had been together forever, and they gave the Buffs a run for their money. So, I think the line is probably appropriate for where we stand right now without knowing much about where CU is at right now, to be quite frank with you. However, to William's point, standalone game, Friday night, crazy crowd. It's going to be a great atmosphere, but Colorado does have to prove that they can win without Shedeur and Travis. I think that we all believe that can happen and that we expect that to happen, but that needs to be proven. And when we're talking about lines and Vegas setting the line, there's a reason that their season win-loss total right now is only at 6, right? So
yeah, and until we prove otherwise, we're going to be the team that lost Shedeur and Travis.
That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm trying to say, guys, is I'm not trying to pile on that narrative, but it's true. Until they establish a new set of stars or a new storyline, that will be what is talked about the most, especially from a national perspective, leading into the season opener.
And I would just finish back with the statement, though, that I think Georgia Tech is going to be a good team, but they're beatable. We can
agree.
We can win this game. It's not
for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. I'm not intimidated by Georgia Tech. I think it should be a very good game. The point was, if you could offer me Delaware or Georgia Tech off the bat, I would probably open the year with Delaware, to be quite honest with you.
Well, them blue hens, baby.
All right. Next up, we got a question from Paul Noto. He asked, it appears from misses on several key transfer portal targets this cycle that our NIL funding is probably below average for a Power 4 school. Do you have any insight as to whether that should improve under revenue sharing? I know that Rick G and the AD staff have been preparing for revenue sharing as a foregone conclusion. Do you know if they plan on fully funding it for the football program? Also, Buff Nation needs to step up In William's eloquent parlance, quit your whining and donate to the Buff Club if you want to continue landing top players.
If he's quoting me, didn't he leave a few F-bombs out of there?
I think maybe at least one. Yeah.
Let's lump this question in from OMG or Dumb too as well. It's kind of along the same lines. He asked, what does CU have to do to keep up with the arms race in major college football that seems inevitable with the House v. NCAA class action lawsuit settlement? So I'll kick it over to you guys real quick.
Can I ask the question for you guys first to add to that? Do you buy the premise of the question that our NIL is probably below average for a Power 4 school?
That's what I was going to address first. I would not say it's below average for a Power 4 school. Where you're not is at the top of the pecking order as far as that goes. And so you're going to lose a lot of blue chip guys because a Tennessee or a Miami or
Texas,
the list goes on.
Yeah.
You're not competing at that level. Below that level, Colorado is in the game now under Coach Prime. So does that answer your question, William?
Yeah, and I just wanted to. I didn't want to just accept the premise and go from there. But I still think there's a lot about recruiting that comes down to recruiting, and people think it's all about who hands out the biggest bag of money. And for some of those kids, the difference might be substantial, but for some of them, it's going to be, marginal, what we offer versus what Georgia Tech offers, since we were talking about them. But at the end of the day, kids pick schools for a lot of different reasons, and it's not always because of the money. And some guy might think he has a better shot to play at another place, or he just likes it better there, or likes the coach, or whatever. So I think there's a lot of factors that go into recruiting, and I just have to push back a little bit against the idea that it's all about the size of the check that's being written. And that's all I got to say about it.
Well, when the check's like 600, 700 grand compared to maybe like 100 grand, I do think it makes a difference. And, and to be honest, I think Adam said it really well. It's not that, for compared to other average Power 4 schools in my opinion, I have no frame of reference. I have no idea what's going on financially behind the scenes. This is a very complicated topic. But the point that the crux of what Adam said, except I think you simplified it just a little bit too much, only because those elite schools who have the biggest bankrolls, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them, right? And it may not be every school's got 40 million, but there's plenty in the SEC and the Big Ten that I'm sure are outdoing Colorado. I without knowing the numbers, this is just projection, but I would say it's pretty safe to assume, based upon the way things went in this transfer portal, that it significantly had more of an impact this year than it did even last year. Things have changed. The reason why things have changed is this is the last stop these schools are seeing at the OK Corral, where if you truly have a competitive advantage by being able to simply write a bigger check, right now it's not regulated. So right now teams are handing out big checks. Look at what Texas Tech is doing. I mean, they overspent in the portal on a lot of guys, and we'll see if it works out for them. But they spent a lot of money on that roster. So I would just say I definitely think it's had a real impact. I think not being at the top of the table with a lot of these teams has had an impact this year on what they've been able to do. I really believe that. I mean, otherwise it would be very confusing. I mean, you're telling me you're passing on some of these guys, right? You didn't go get a running back one, a legitimate starting inside linebacker from a Power 4 school. Like, there were things that they could have done that would have at least given me an indication that they were more on that path. But right now I haven't seen a ton of evidence. But to your point, Adam, it doesn't mean that compared to other schools in their pecking order that they have anything, much less than other schools do. I just think it's kind of like imposter syndrome right now, because you are recruiting a ton of top blue chip talent, and you're definitely not going to have the money to pay them all, right? And so it's kind of like, CU is really just trying to stay into this relevant game where, hey, look, we matter. But again, you need wins to back this up without Shedeur and Travis. I think that's what the portal has told us more than anything, to be honest.
And I think you got a great point there, Matt, that a lot of guys, until Coach Prime is here for a few years and proves, like now, every year there's been something to prove, right? This year, it's like you got to prove you can win without Shedeur and Travis. And some guys are going to be like, I don't want to take my last year and go there, and I don't know if you're going to be any damn good.
And the
You
other
know?
place is paying me more money, and I got a better chance to win over there. That's what they're thinking. Yeah.
Right. And so I think if we show that we can get 8 or 9 wins this year in a transition year, then the next year after that, it's a whole easier sell again.
I agree.
One thing to add in here for somebody that's discouraged over the NIL and being a Colorado fan is you can look at the Big 12 rankings in terms of transfer rankings, overall rankings. And Colorado's number 2, and the only team that's ahead of them in the Big 12 is Texas Tech, which unloaded a ton of NIL money. The prior year, Colorado was number 1 in the conference. So, yes, it's tough to envision an easy path to Colorado playing in the national championship game in this current landscape of NIL. But, I mean, in terms of we're talking about the goal being competing for the Big 12 every year, you're beating out Big 12 teams for recruits. And so
right.
You know.
And if every year we're putting guys in the NFL draft, and if every year we're getting in, playing for the playoffs, guys are going to start saying, hey, I want to be a part of that because that's a place I can go and not only win, but get trained for the NFL and get drafted. So I think there's just a lot more that plays into it. And the other thing I would say is that, Texas A&M paid for the highest, best class a year or two ago. And what did they do? They didn't do anything, right?
Nothing.
Yeah. Right.
No, it doesn't mean
to the big wins, So we'll see what Texas Tech does this year, but go ahead.
I was just going to say, I love the point that Adam brought up because I think it does get lost in translation is that, look, at the end of the day, really what you're trying to do is compete in your own conference. That's really what you're trying to do. And Colorado has proved that they are absolutely going to compete, at least resource-wise, at the top of the Big 12. I'm really glad you brought that up, Adam, because Coach Prime sets such lofty expectations for this program. When we're talking about playoff and national championship, you automatically look at the SEC and the Big Ten and not just what's going on in your own conference. And the truth is, with an expanded playoff, at least temporarily, or whatever it's going to look like moving forward, there are more opportunities to get in from within your own conference. At least I think there will be. So that's a very valid point, because if we're just talking about making it, winning it, though, is where I think we then have to go, okay, well, we can say that you're going to compete with the top of the Big 12, but guys, I watched the playoff the same as you. I mean, does anybody think that you can have anything other than a Big 10 or an SEC offensive and defensive line to win a national championship right now? I kept looking at Arizona State and Boise State. I mean, that's cute that they gave it the good old college try, but there's no way in hell they were making it deep in the playoff. And so that's where I think the distinction comes from some fans that trips people up, because to your point, Adam, within the Big 12, not much more that you can really ask for right now. I just don't think that that's the standard you're going to have to compare yourself and uphold yourself to if we're going to really legitimately talk about putting Coach Prime's face on the Flatirons.
And the other, you just got me going here, because first of all, I want to yell out to the Boise State fans. Matt said you're cute, and I think it's a funny word, and I like it. But if you look at the teams that did win the Big 12 last year and played for it, they weren't NIL built teams, none of them. So I think to get to that next level you're talking about will require more of that. But to win this darn conference, I think we're in a good spot, because if you're top 2 every year in terms of what you're bringing in, you ought to be in the top 2 in the conference every year.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Adam, because I think a lot of people kind of miss when we talk about the standard. But if you're talking about the Big 12 standard, they're right on track.
Right.
This kind of segues us into a question here from Blue Sky Buff. He's talking about the future here. In 10 years, what do you think college football in its landscape looks like? How does Colorado fit in? Colorado, that's impossible to answer that. In terms of what college football looks like in 10 years, Matt, you just got to hope the courts have figured it out, right? Because just recently, Tennessee has a state law where they're not going to cap NIL. And so you're going to have a really hard time getting everybody to agree to the same NIL rules here going forward. At some point, and I would think 10 years is long enough to iron that out, but maybe that's the optimist in me.
Well, I'm really glad that we have an attorney with us here that can help clarify things. So, William, essentially, for people out there who really don't understand, the reason we keep going in this circle here is because the NCAA continued to get sued for antitrust, right? That's what's essentially going on here, right? That's all the courts are ruling against the NCAA, saying in no other walk of life can you limit or put arbitrary restrictions on what somebody's income, et cetera, is going to be, right? I mean, hypothetically, more or less in the most layman's terms possible, right?
But I think also that individual organizations that teams choose to be part of, and that's going to be the question mark legally, is can you do that if you choose not to be in the NCAA? Does that penalize you so much that you can't do it? But there are protections for organizations where people choose to be part of it, that they can set rules, right?
Right. I'm just talking about what's led us to this point, not like moving forward. That's why we are where we are, because the NCAA keeps getting sued because they keep operating as an entity that, I mean, isn't fair trade under any other sort of, employer employee relationship. But the problem is that the kids aren't employees, and the schools and the presidents and the ADs, they don't want to make them, because that's a lot more money. That's a lot more other things that go into it. But the problem is, until you collectively bargain with them, they're going to continue winning in court. So we're going to keep doing this over and over and over. Even recently, the alleged commission that was going to be put together, which I'll save a lot of my thoughts, is no longer going, or at least it's being put on pause by the executive branch of our government right now. For some reason, they're getting involved in it. So whatever. The point is that I don't know what the future of college athletics looks like, because none of us do, until we get to an employer-employee status, which the schools don't want to do. Then we're going to keep doing this. So it's, to me, it's a disaster. It's an absolute disaster.
Well, I think that there's a real possibility. There's a future where there are athletics that are associated with colleges in the sense that they are now, right? Because at the end of the day, what the hell does football have to do with the mission of a university? But they're in it now because there's big money. But if at the end of the day it doesn't end up being big money because now you got to pay for this, that, and the other thing, or you're getting sued all the time, do the presidents of the universities really want to be involved in it? Now, I know all the arguments for why, big basketball and big football championships are good for enrollment and blah, 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 and yada, yada. But who the hell can see 10 years down the road? All I can tell you for a sure thing 10 years down the road is if I haven't kicked over and gone put in a hole, because I'll be 70 years old, I'll be fishing somewhere and I won't be freaking worrying about this.
Well, what I'll say is the NCAA has had enough of it, to the point where they just recently told schools, presidents, and conferences, or at least agreed upon with conferences, that we don't want anything to do with regulating NIL. All the NIL regulation, it's going to be governed by this new body that isn't created yet. And oh, by the way, can we get an antitrust exemption for them so that you guys can't actually sue them? It's like, what? No, until we have equal parties at the table together, this is going to be a mess.
And you have to wonder if there's even a future for the NCAA to exist, because what the hell do they actually do?
Why didn't the conferences tell them to, fuck off? Honestly, that's what I would have done. I'd been like, what do we need to abide with you by? The academic standards?
That's what I said, Matt. That's what I said about the damn spring game. Who gives a damn that they say we can't bring Syracuse out here anyway and give them the finger and let them do something?
I honestly, what would they have done? I don't know.
Yeah, right. Taking away meals for walk-ons, I guess.
I'm just saying, the point is, though, that the future of college football is super conferences. I think, it's a commercialized, it's basically minor league sports, right? I mean, it's basically minor league football. And to be honest with you, a lot of people will bristle at that. And I have a lot of people that I know, as do we all, that work in academics, who are vehemently opposed to making students employees, because you'll lose things like training table and it will negatively affect other Olympic sports. Guess what? That's already happening. Title IX, women's sports, that's already under attack. The sooner we can break football off away from everything, unfortunately, football can no longer subsidize a lot of these other sports. That's kind of going to be the problem if you're going to have to revenue share. But the problem is the House settlement, even if they find a way to pass it, which I don't think they will, they'll just sue it this year, and then next year it'll be null and void. So it's a disaster.
We could go on around for this for an hour. Adam, you better step in, man.
It just raises your blood pressure at a certain point when you
It
start
does.
talking about this.
Yeah.
Really. And the great thing is that college football is as popular now as it's ever been. But the
Crazy.
question here is talking 10 years. I mean, at some point,
Right.
this is going to catch up from a rating standpoint. It's not happening now, but it makes me frustrated. But again, this is the new landscape, and it's certainly not going to change anytime soon. And it's not going to get resolved, as Matt said, anytime soon, because there's some really tough issues to break through with this. Let's move on.
Just real quick for me, the allure of the Colorado Buffaloes is guys that walked through the same buildings I walked through and went to the same classes I went to and wore the same uniform I went to. And if they're not part of that, I don't really give a damn. It's just another minor league sports team.
I hear you, but conversely, I could also give a shit if a guy was a psychology major. Like, that does nothing for me. I'm here to watch the logo on the jersey, and you live in my town and you play in my town. That does enough for me. So, like, I hear you, but I think this is also part of it, where the importance of education, like, I mean, we sat and listened to CU's basketball coach, kind of express his thoughts on the current, era of college sports and Tad, and I don't think anybody has a really clear idea of where we're headed or what we're doing right now. And a lot of these guys are just kind of operating on the fly without really having a firm grasp of what they're doing, what budgets are, what the future looks like. It's just really kind of flying by the seat of their pants.
Well, and also to illustrate that point, and then I'm sorry I got us going again, but this football team had the highest GPA it's ever had. Nobody gives a damn. Nobody gives a damn.
I give a damn, William.
It's awesome.
That's why I love
It's
you, man.
awesome.
Come here, get in here. All three of us, get in here. Big group hug.
I do love, though, the stories like Ben Finiseth, that's, this gregarious kid, and then you find out he's a biomechanical engineering major, and then you're like, what?
He'll make more money than all of us in 5 years.
So like almost as smart as the three of us, then, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, let's move along. Ellie Buff asked, which recruits have done an official visit with the Buffaloes do you like CU's chances with?
Gavin Mueller.
Gavin Mueller. That's an easy one there, William.
That's my answer. That's my answer, because I'm deferring to you two.
Okay. Well, Florida offensive lineman Johnny Jones was a first name that came to mind. He was actually their first official visitor. I had a chance to talk to Jace Matthews, a blue chip receiver out of Mississippi. He basically said that these other schools I'm going to go visit, the bar has been set very high by Colorado. So, and Deacon Schmidt from Windsor, I mean, he's been on CU's campus a ton. So we'll see if they can pull in an in-state kid. All these guys are taking a lot of visits. Cedarian Morgan, a 5-star receiver. Colorado legitimately gave them a chance in that. But as we talked about earlier, the heavy hitters are after these kids, and they've got more visits coming up. But Colorado's hosting more guys too, so it's going to rev back up. It's been quiet the last couple of weeks with high school recruiting, and partly because Colorado's players are not on campus, and it does make a difference. The recruits, when they come out for their official visit and they get a chance to hang out with the current guys, usually that makes a big difference. And so you don't want to host a lot of guys during this May break. So that's going to start up pretty soon, where they start hosting more guys in the 2026 class.
Yeah, I think, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to go on to the next question. You got something to add there?
I think Deacon Schmidt is probably the best option. I mean, when a guy comes to see you 5 or 6 times, you got to figure there's something going on there. But then somebody also asked me, what's the difference between Felix Ojo, who's the top-rated tackle, and Johnny Jones, who's, slightly below him at a 92. And the difference between those two kids, you couldn't slide a playing card between the difference between those two guys, and it all depends on who evaluated them and who ranked them. But, Johnny Jones is every bit as good a prospect as Felix Ojo, and either one of those guys would be like getting another Jordan Seaton, quite frankly, at tackle.
Yeah. RS Golf asked, how long does it take to do curb repair in a subdivision? This is our transition to off-topic questions. This is got to be from a neighbor here in Johnstown.
This is an HOA question.
Yeah. My initial response was 84 years. It's been 84 years. They have been taking forever to get this done, and everybody's parking in a really inconvenient spot. So
oh wait,
that's
this
an
is
inside
happening to you?
This is happening to me.
What's
it's a
going
neighbor.
on?
I believe I'm blanking on his name. I'm awful the first time I meet somebody. The second time I always make a point to do the association.
Wow.
But it's a neighbor on the east side of my neighborhood, I think, that I had a chance to meet once when I was walking my dog.
And what's happening?
They are doing curb repairs across the neighborhood, and they come in and they tear up the ground, and then they take off for a week.
Yeah,
Well, how big
that's
is your town?
construction.
Your town's got like 4 employees, doesn't it?
That's
plus,
right.
plus the orange guy, we laid them all off. So
Yeah. If they're going to make that kind of a trek all the way up north like that, then we have to make sure that we've got everything dialed in. We're not just going to be back and forth. I mean, think of the gas mileage.
you can't just get concrete in Gillette, Wyoming, where you live, just any day.
Gillette, Wyoming. Is that even a town? Gillette, Wyoming?
Actually is a real place.
Okay.
Well, they go and they pour it all at once, especially if you're going to do that much of it at once, right? And you're not just like repairing a cracked curb.
All right. Matt standing up for the construction crew. All right. I'll back
people.
off.
That's my people.
We're going to have to add construction analysts and physics analysts to this podcast.
I've got my trowel right over here, and I got some concrete. I'll come up there and start pouring, but I'm going to get like a block done today.
All right, William. I'm teeing this up for you. Buffs Up on Buff Stampede asked, can you guys maybe explain Bell's theorem in simple terms?
Well, I think it all depends on the interpretation of quantum mechanics you want to use, Adam. Wouldn't you think? I mean, it's the old Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen paradox. Come on, man.
How didn't you think of that, Adam? I mean, you don't have anything to say to William? I mean, hello.
I'm not participating in this question. Is that it, William? Come on, break it down.
No, well, if I've already lost you at this point, man, I'd have to put it on the whiteboard and we have to do equations, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I asked AI the simplest way to break down Bell's theorem. Are you curious?
Yes.
It says Bell's theorem proves the universe is stranger than common sense says it should be.
and that we knew.
So there you go. There's my take.
That's actually really good.
Yeah, there's my take.
Yeah.
All right, we got a food question here, which means Matt can't answer. CT Buff asked, CT Buff asked, chicken marsala or chicken piccata to impress.
Honestly,
the guests.
that was my first thought was I'm going to let you guys pick.
He says that he makes both of them equally well. So good for you, CT Buff. Those are a couple good dishes. I'll start with you, William. What are you making to impress your guests?
Well, I mean, if you're going to pick between those two, really, it comes down to, do you prefer wine or do you prefer lemon? I love them both. I think they're both fantastic, but
yeah,
you know, but
I make a dish called chicken schnitzel. You ever had that?
I've had it in Germany. I bet it's different than yours.
Maybe. Well, how did they make it in Germany?
Well, I don't know. I didn't go in the back and they don't let you just go in the back and look at it, but I think it's
okay. How was it served? What did it look like when it came out on your plate?
Looked like,
that was funny.
Looked like everything else fried to me.
Is it just like chicken in a casing? Is it like in a schnitzel?
Schnitzel. No, so you get your chicken breast, you throw it in a Ziploc, and you get out your what do they call that?
I don't need the goddamn recipe. What does it look like?
It's a thin breaded chicken breast.
Okay.
But you put lemon on it and you serve it with Dijon. It's really good.
Got it.
Yeah. That's what I go to, but that wasn't his question. So I go piccata, but chicken schnitzel's my go-to. You throw some garlic mashed potatoes on the side, some veggies. It's a good dish.
Yeah, and it really looks. I mean, it really looks like any kind of breaded chicken, except the schnitzel is made out of a different ingredients.
So yeah, I've known Matt for about 15 years now. Never seen the man eat. Never seen the man eat. Have you ever had chicken before? Any form of chicken?
That's all I eat is chicken.
Okay.
It just depends. It does.
Okay.
If you were to ask me what I was going to impress somebody by cooking, it would definitely be I do a really great sandwich where I get this Rudy's organic sourdough, and then I'll go to the grocery store, get some sliced deli chicken, but real thin. I ask them to do it shaved, and then just a little cheese in there, provolone, whatever you want, dealer's choice. We get it in the pan, a little butter, and then we bake the sandwich, and it's fantastic. That's the extent of my cooking abilities. My entire family gives me a hard time. They're like, Matt, just cook chicken. Every time that I try and cook a breast of chicken, I always end up throwing it away. So I just go, you know what? I'll go out to eat or I'll keep it simple. At this stage in Colorado, I don't enjoy the food enough out here to actually like want to go out everywhere. So I've just stopped enjoying food. That's where I'm at. It's just,
what did you eat yesterday? What did you eat yesterday? Break it down.
What did I eat yesterday? I don't know.
This is riveting podcasting.
This is great. This is great.
Between 17 years old and 28 years old, I spent 10 years enlisted in the Marine Corps and Navy.
Yeah,
I ate whatever they gave me.
That's what I'm saying.
And
that's
I like
just whatever I need to do to get to the next meal. That's kind of where I'm at.
You know, you're out there in the middle of nowhere in the desert, and they bring you out something hot. Hey, man, what is this cat? I don't. Oh, good cat, man. Appreciate it.
The backstory here, William, is that in my over 15 years of working in media, I have never eaten a free media meal ever, just because I don't eat lunch, and I'm one of those guys who doesn't like to eat when they're working. But Brian and Adam, they don't pass up those free media meals. You know, it doesn't matter what it could be.
You've seen the video of us eating the burger at frickin' Sink, right? I mean,
no, I didn't catch that one. Oh, the Juju burger?
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
And the mac and cheese oh my God.
No, both of them are connoisseurs. When Brian goes on road trips, he used to find places from diners, you know, what is it? Diners,
drive-ins and dives, yeah.
And he'd go, you know, to these random places. And I'd be like, I don't know. I just went to McDonald's and just, I don't know.
That's awful.
Yeah, I went to Wendy's last night. It was a good burger. What do you want?
It was a good burger. I'm just saying, it's get me to my next meal.
Right?
All right. Well,
I'm wasted on, Steuben's or something really good.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying. Take Buff fans, take Adam to the steakhouse. William and I'll join you at the bar.
Well, hey, if they're paying, they could take us too.
Well, Matt, you are our construction consultant.
Yeah.
William, our physics consultant. You're fired from food commentary going forward, though. I'll take that over. All right. We got another off-topic one. We got another food question here. At Jussie Curtail on X asked, what are your top 3 fruits to eat?
Oh, I can participate.
With one honorable mention. We should do like a fruit draft.
You go first, Adam. You go first.
I'm going to take strawberries.
Oh, I love that. I love that pick. Are we going to go in a round here?
Yeah, Matt, you're up.
Oh, okay. You went strawberries. Also on my list, by the way. Also, I mean, nothing like a fresh straw. Oh, delicious. Nectarine. Oh, good nectarine. Please.
Yeah, my first round draft pick is a banana.
Simple.
Okay.
Classic.
Simple.
Potassium.
All right. I'm going to go grapes, red grapes specifically.
Specifically red grapes. You know what I heard somebody talk about the other day? I heard somebody talk about freezing grapes. Have you ever had frozen grapes? I've heard that's pretty good.
I thought they explode.
Do they? If they do, why are you telling him? That would have been hilarious.
Experiment.
I don't know. I was listening to a podcast and somebody said they enjoy that. All right. So who's it back to now? Me?
Back to you. Yeah.
See, I think I'm going to stick in the same category, but like a good plum. Okay. Nectarine, plum, citrus.
And I'll stay in the citrus world and the little tangerines, like the little oranges.
Clementines?
Yeah, something like that. They're not all the same, and I don't know which ones are the good ones, really juicy ones, but they peel easily. And just eat them as a snack.
All right, I'm going to go with kind of a polarizing fruit here. People either love it or hate it. I'm going cantaloupe.
Oh, yeah.
I like melon. Melon's not bad. A good melon, though. I feel like there's a lot of bad melon out there.
There is.
Yeah, I just never liked the cantaloupe taste. Have you ever heard, like, okay, you got a little bit off topic, but you guys like cilantro?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So cilantro to me tastes like soap because
you're one of them. You're one of them. Okay.
There's a gene. If you have a certain gene, cilantro tastes like soap. And so I always thought, well, I don't know why do people like this damn thing, but I've got that
What'd
gene.
You say?
Yeah, if you look up cilantro on the internet, there's a certain gene that some people have, and I have it, and it makes cilantro taste like soap.
Is that just what you tell your wife?
No, it's okay, man. It's on the internet. It's got to be true.
It's true, Matt. Yeah.
I believe you.
Yeah.
And I'm going to stick in the same category, although I feel like these are all great options and I am a big fan of fruit, but a good peach, oh my God. A good Colorado peach for that matter. We have great peaches here. Probably the only thing we do well here.
Is the Mackinac peach a real thing?
Mackinac peaches. Let the juice just drip down your chin. Nothing like a good peach.
And I'll bet my third pick would be an apple, but a certain kind, a Honeycrisp apple.
Honeycrisp.
The crisp is the part of it that makes it so special.
Yeah, agreed.
All right. Are we going to keep drafting until all the fruit is gone?
No, they said 3.
Yeah, they said 3 with an honorable mention for that matter.
Oh, that's right.
I'll draft blueberries as my honorable mention.
Oh, that's a good pick.
That's a good pick.
That is a good pick.
Yeah. Forgot about that.
What are we forgetting? We had cherries still on the board.
Oh, a good cherry is nice too. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to take cherry as my honorable mention.
Watermelon?
Sure. I'll go watermelon. There's nothing like in the summer ripping into a fresh piece of watermelon. Yeah. I talked to my mom the other day. She told me she'd been freezing watermelon.
What's going on with the freezing of fruits over at your house?
I don't know. It's not in my the grapes was not a me thing. She just told me that. So I don't know. Good healthy snack, Adam. I don't know.
If you got a blender, you can freeze bananas, cut them up, and that makes great smoothies.
Sure, for smoothies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, this has been an interesting pod. Anybody out there, if you're still with us, congrats, because you got patience.
Well, the players.
We ought to give an award right now to see if anybody's actually out there still listening.
Just a test question. Reply to Adam if.
Yeah, if you made it to the end of this show, put it in the comments. We'll give you an attaboy.
What is 13 times 167? Just put the number in the comments.
Well, the players are set to return next weekend, so alleluia. We're going to have less fruit discussion, more football discussion on the next show.
Maybe we'll do vegetables next time.
Vegetables. It was funny because was it Prince Akamara? Is that his name? The
Amukamara, yeah.
Yeah, he was at the Heisman deal, and he was dressed up like in a. How would you describe that? He was Mr. A, is what he called himself. It was kind of like a kid's character.
Yeah, he asked Travis what his favorite vegetable was, didn't he?
He asked Travis what his favorite vegetable was, and Travis said, I don't eat vegetables.
Yeah.
It was a teaching moment to the kids, and Travis was not taking the bait.
No, but that's the type of kid Travis is. He's the, chicken nuggets, and he's real straightforward.
Yeah, I think didn't he and Shador eat McDonald's on the way to every game? Wasn't that their tradition?
Not sure, but honestly, I mean, Ocho Cinco says it works, so.
Hey, when you're 19, 20, 21, 22,
and all you do and what you do for a living is run.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we've exhausted the topics here, guys. It was a lot of fun, Matt.
Thanks for having me, boys.
One of these days, I'm going to get an invite to your house, and I'm going to get the sandwich you're talking of. And no, okay.
And I think that in the future, people
you didn't invite me to dinner on your wedding night. We'll save the invite to the house dinner once that's rectified. Okay. Okay. Let Liz know for me, will you?
All right.
I got plenty of time this summer.
Okay. William, we'll see you next week.
I'll be here, not going anywhere, I don't think. But at least now people on the Stampede board know whatever crazy question they ask, we'll answer it.
This is true. It's been proven today. Yeah. So, all right, guys, appreciate you, and I appreciate everybody out there for tuning in.
Good to see you, boys.